Hello there, fellow civilized people. A thing happened in Iowa yesterday, and I'm not referring to the freezing temperatures, or the heavy snowfall, or the man found dead outside of a convenience store in Urbandale. But yes, to answer the burning question on your mind regarding that, it did take me considerable time to find any manner of news about anything at all that happened in Iowa yesterday that wasn't related to the Republican presidential caucus. Last week, there were five candidates worth mentioning, but following the departure of obese lawyer, only four remained. But after a disappointing result last night, some Indian guy has also dropped out, leaving only three. Those three being Orange Man, Florida Man, and some Indian woman. So, happy primary season, Colton. Isn't it your favorite time of every 4 years?
The best damn season I've ever seasoned.
Truly. I mean, it really is the pinnacle of love and joy.
That's right.
Man. So, I suppose we should look at some Indian guy first.
Hmm.
So, obviously, disappointing night for him. He wound up at 7.7% as of what I am looking at. And, well, he will obviously not good enough for him because he has decided to step out of the race. But in your eyes, what do you think that Ramaswamy needed to do in the Iowa primary, or caucus rather?
Well, I think if you're a serious contender, you needed to hit double digit support. He did not do that, and nor did he hit, his kind of median poll percentage of 8%. So he underperformed that as well.
Yes. I do think that Ramaswamy was hedging his bets a bit with the young vote.
Hmm.
And I think he learned the lesson that a lot of candidates have learned over the years. Young people really just don't turn out and vote.
Especially not in -1 degree weather with -40 degree wind chill.
Oh, yes. But I think he hedged his bets there a bit too much. And I do agree with you. I think he needed to hit 10%. And honestly, I think best case scenario for him, given that he was polling at 8%, margin of error was just under four. Like, I think 12% would have been high for him,
Hmm.
but I think the best case for Ramaswamy's political career would have been for an underperformance from Haley, which we did see and we will discuss shortly, a bit of an underperformance from DeSantis, and then sort of bring himself a little closer to those two.
Yeah.
But that very clearly did not transpire. Although of interest is surprisingly, despite his push for young voters, he and Trump both tied at 21% of the youth vote, which, I mean, that's tied for third when you have the other two in. But it was very noticeable. His appeal dropped off the older people were.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah, like what was it? The oldest polled section, he was at what, 3%? And in youth, he was 21.
Yeah, and the
So,
65 or older was 43% of the vote, and the 17 to 29 vote was 9% of the vote.
yeah, so he got, 21% and 9% of the vote. So that was probably his biggest category,
Hmm.
which is not the kind of place you want to be.
No,
That said, that said, what are your takeaways in regards to Ramaswamy? What what
I
what can we learn from his campaign?
Well, we can always learn to not expect the youth to show up, especially in a Republican caucus. Um, but I think the biggest misplay is that he dropped out now. I kind of want to see where he would have performed in a more metropolitan area.
Yeah, I think that would have been pretty interesting to see. I think if he was going to overperform, I don't think it would have been New Hampshire because that's an open primary.
Hmm.
But I do believe somewhere like possibly even a Florida in a college town, definitely in Nevada, I think he would have overperformed.
Definitely, yeah. Like I said, I think he dropped out too soon after getting just the first results. I mean, Asa
Yeah,
Hutchinson still hasn't dropped out for God's sake, and he got like 15 votes.
this is true. Well, we'll have to address Ace's comeback plan later.
Oh yeah.
He's going to do it. You got to believe.
I just love how earlier in like when it was still like less than 1,000 votes were in, it was he was tied with the remnants of Chris Christie's corpse of a campaign, and
Yeah,
then Chris Christie went down one vote and then he went up one vote, and Robert and I were going stop the steal. It was hilarious.
truly. We wish you could have been there. But I really think the two big takeaways from Ramaswamy's campaign are first off, I mean, you need to win the youth vote if you are a Democrat, but you're not going to win them if you are a Republican, not generally.
No.
It's just sort of a foregone conclusion. But I do think Ramaswamy had another problem. That being the fact that Iowa, well, evangelicals make up a considerable portion of Iowa's Republican voters. And Ramaswamy is a Hindu. And I think I mentioned it whenever we were discussing this in last week's video. That Romney just lacked a lot of appeal because he's a Mormon, and there are a lot of differences between where evangelical Christians stand and how they feel about the LDS faith. But with Romney, Mormonism is, while members of the LDS faith, excuse me, are Christian, they do break with certain tenets that are core to a lot of other Protestant groups. So, you know, if that was enough of a difference to impact Romney, I think it's safe to say being a Hindu impact his ability to perform in Iowa.
Hmm. Definitely. I can see where you're coming from there.
So it is worth noting that he suspended his campaign. He has endorsed Trump. So that's something we'll have to consider whenever we look forward to New Hampshire. But next up, I guess we need to talk about some Indian woman. And, I want to start by congratulating Nikki Haley. As it stands, with the data I have in front of me, Nikki is one of only two candidates to have appears to be winning a county in Iowa. I speak, of course, of Johnson County, which, again, as the data I have in front of me, she is beating Orange Man with 1,271 votes to Orange Man's 1,270 votes. So, resounding victory there for Nikki Haley. Wouldn't you say?
Um, I I mean I wouldn't put any money on that, still being around at the end of the week.
I mean, we as of now, they've not confirmed that all the votes have been counted there, so I don't know. But that one was surprisingly close.
Good for her.
But yeah, you got to take the small wins, Colton.
This is, I mean, she did famously, finish her speech with saying that, it's now Iowa proved that this is a two-person race. So she took that really to heart.
Apparently.
Yeah,
Uh,
what a overconfident thing to say.
oh, yes. But give me just a moment. Nikki Haley is, as the data I am looking at, sitting at 19.1% of the vote in Iowa. And coming into this, she was polling at 20% within the Des Moines Register's poll, which I have to assume a lot of our listeners are not exactly like they're not plugged in to all of these polls. But to put this into perspective, the Des Moines Register's poll is not only the most reliable poll in the state of Iowa, it might be the most reliable damn poll in the country. They are consistently very accurate. And while they had her at 20% in that, she still performed within margin of error, but she underperformed the median. They expected her to get 20%, and currently, as of what's counted, she's sitting at 19.1% with the vast majority of votes already counted. So I'm not sure how much that would shift. But it does appear that at least based upon, the median for that poll in that regard. So, what did you think that Nikki Haley needed to do in Iowa?
Well, her biggest goal was to obviously be the clear second person in line behind Trump. That that should have been her goal in entirety. She spent I did she spend the most money in Iowa? I'm not sure.
Uh, yes, she did. She outspent the next closest, which who was Ron DeSantis, by $2 million. Haley spent 37 million, both with her campaign and supporting PAC supporting her. So 37 million spent on behalf of Haley in Iowa.
Yeah, 37 million's not going to be happy with a third place, even if it was that close.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And honestly, I think, well, Nikki hadn't banked all that much on Iowa. I would like to think she knew enough going into it to where she knew she wasn't really going to make any waves there. Not really.
Hmm.
Or at least I would like to think that her campaign advisors would have known that. So I think she just went there to, keep her name in the paper until New Hampshire. And to the credit of her a bit, she has sort of risen to this position over the course of the debates. She's sort of risen and she's sort of managed to hold on to it. But I think she just needed to display some kind of presence there. So on my end, I think she did what she needed to do in Iowa. Now, what would you have considered a best case scenario for Nikki in Iowa?
I think her most outlandish of advisors would have thought that a 25 could have been possible. But I think realistically she was going for around a 20 to 22-ish area, and but most of that her gains coming from DeSantis, dropping back. I think that would have been her best case scenario.
Yeah, I think that the best case scenario for Nikki would have been to. It didn't even matter how much she won by in Iowa. Trump had a commanding lead. I think what a best case scenario for Nikki would have looked like there would have been a case where she beat DeSantis by 5, 6 points. Just something would have made it very difficult for DeSantis's team to justify continuing,
Hmm.
especially considering DeSantis, all of the DeSantis eggs were in the Iowa basket. And, you know,
Yeah.
if he had lost there, even a lot of his still living, ones that are still with him, donors, would have probably started backing off because they would have seen the writing on the wall. I think as of now, I don't think it really impacted much in the dynamic between DeSantis and Haley. Not really. Not in the immediate future. Uh, what are your what are your major takeaways for Haley?
Well, the major takeaway is that, like you said, she didn't kill DeSantis's campaign. Um, Vivek killed himself, which, lucky for her. But I think most of that's going to filter back to Trump, so that's not going to affect her either way. And
That does affect her
well, yeah,
going
New
into
Hampshire,
New
yeah.
Hampshire.
But I mean, like, that doesn't make her base any bigger. That just means that she has to work all that harder against Trump while still having to beat off DeSantis. No pun intended.
Yeah. So, hmm, honestly, my big takeaway for Nikki is that personally, honestly, I think it's safe to say that the majority of the Never Trump movement in Iowa was behind Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
Fair assessment.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, she didn't underperform by much. And this could have been because of the weather, entirely because of the weather. And it's fully believable. Uh, well, the first takeaway is that it is possible that the Never Trump movement, that she is so determined that she needs to maintain in order to be relevant.
Hmm.
They are not, while there's money there from donors, the average voters aren't enthusiastic. That is a possibility. The second takeaway, and this really does play to her advantage if she plays it right. I don't think it'll win her primary, but I think it could make her competitive longer for cheaper and allow her to run a more cost-effective campaign. Nikki was not really competitive in rural areas.
No, not at all.
By and large, she simply was not. Uh, Basically, you look at the map of going county by county. If it was an urban center, generally Trump was in first and Haley was in second. If it was a rural area, Trump was in first and DeSantis was in second, which, that allows her to, in a state where she knows she can't win much, she can still target it, take out a couple delegates, and move from there. Essentially, just target these population centers with ads and sort of not necessarily avoid the rural areas, but it costs a lot of money to travel around and have a ground game in a lot of those places.
Yeah.
So I think she could sort of focus fire to retain relevance for longer. Now, I suppose the next fellow we got to discuss is Florida man.
Big Rhonda.
Yeah. So credit where it's due. Ron DeSantis overperformed. He was
Massively.
still he's still within margin of error of the poll. Well, the Des Moines Register's poll of 3.7%, but they had him at 18%, and he got 3.2 points higher than that, which is pretty impressive. Which sort of gives me a takeaway that I'll bring away later, but that's that's pretty good. Let's
Hmm.
see. So going into this, what do you think that Florida man needed to do in Iowa?
he needed to be the successor to Trump. That's what he's there for in case anything happens to Trump. And Vivek took himself out of that. So now he is that guy. He could either run on the Never Trumper thing or try to reclaim his what I mentioned in our last episode about how he used to be the kind of man for the next generation of the America First movement. He can do both angles. He can't play both, but he can now do that with Vivek being out.
I agree. I think that going into this, honestly, New Hampshire's coming up. Haley is going to be the big contender there.
Hmm.
But and South Carolina will likely favor Haley over DeSantis. Uh, come Super Tuesday, when you've got a bunch of states coming up that are more favorable to Ron than to Haley, I think that you know he needed to survive. And I'm going to be honest, I am not sure even overperforming is enough for Ron to survive. And let me explain why. Ron spent $35 million in Iowa to get beaten by Trump by 30 points.
Yep.
With Trump spending just over half of what DeSantis spent. And while certainly, you know, Trump was more well-known commodity, DeSantis going into this was widely viewed as not only the heir apparent to the America First movement, but also as one of the most popular Republican governors among Republicans in the country. Like Republicans broadly approve of the way that he has handled Florida. So, he had that. But even now, having to pay that much for a distant second, I'm not sure it's enough to get donors interested
So I think
because I don't see a state where he can actually beat Trump.
I don't know if that's the goal. Like I said, I don't think that this primary season is can be anywhere near regular. It's not like the 2016 season where it was an actual open primary with competitive. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah,
this is a weird sort of incumbent scenario, a- and then also, but the main guy is in some questionable legal things, which puts doubt for like 30% of the Republican Party, right?
yeah,
So you're
I
kind of winning for that. You're going for that 30-35%.
yeah. I think if he stays in, he does have the ability to, you know, sort of mantle the American First movement. Now, what are your takeaways for DeSantis and all? Actually, excuse me. What was your best case scenario for DeSantis in all of this?
I think this was his best
What could
case
he have
scenario.
possibly done?
Maybe he could have won
I'm
some.
actually
Go ahead.
I'm actually inclined to agree with you. I do think that this was more or less his best case scenario.
He very much was. He was super competitive. Relatively in the rural areas, right? He probably wants to pick up some
Yeah,
more of the suburban vote, but I think that this was the best he could have got with what he had.
yeah. I think you are absolutely right. I believe that I like I said, I don't mean to, be down on the situation for him. I don't see a path where he can win the presidency in the primary. Just because in a lot of ways the rural voters that adore Trump, he is trying to cater to the people that like Trump in a lot of ways by being Trump light. And I'm not sure, trying to sell a knockoff when the general article is right there is a winning strategy. But if his goal was to stay in the race and be that heir in the event something happens, then I think he has accomplished that.
Yeah, he's not swimming towards any goal, but he is treading water pretty excellently.
I have to agree. And I mean, the one thing that I have to say in this that I think did help DeSantis a lot was that while again, these are preliminary numbers, we'll know everything for certain once all the votes are counted. But it looks like, according to what I've seen, that we had a lower overall turnout, most likely caused by arm that was, running, covering the whole of Ohio, excuse me, Iowa.
Damn
And
you, Ohio.
damn you. Uh, anyway, obviously you had that happening,
Hmm.
but I think the big takeaway in all this is that if nothing else, rural voters are really motivated. And I'm not sure whether that's just because Trump is on the ballot, because that's always rural voters are always turning out in higher numbers when Trump is on the ballot. But yeah, I'm not sure to what degree that impacted DeSantis' success or whether that mostly just impacted Trump. But I have to say that going back to this turnout, it didn't appear to impact rural voters so much. And these are voters who, in cases, had to drive 30 miles to get to a polling station.
I'd like to offer
So,
my own schizo solution to this answer right here.
oh, please go for it.
They have bigger trucks,
You
and
might
they're
be onto something.
and they're used to driving in shit weather, long distances.
Fair point. Uh, yeah, my takeaway is I just don't think inclement weather in the current environment is going to impact rural voters that much. Which, considering the general election is in November, that might be something where you know something in the past that might have hindered, presumably a Trump if he wins the primary, but whoever wins the Republican primary, in the event of inclement weather come November. So let's see. I suppose it's about the time where we discuss Orange Man.
Hmm.
So in our last video, we you know Orange Man was in a good place to win the Iowa primary. And I think it's important to put this victory into, you know, the scale of this into perspective compared to other Iowa primaries, because it's actually quite impressive. Um, Historically, to the Des Moines Register poll, it is historically the most accurate. At a 28-point lead over his nearest rival, he was 8 points higher than the highest polling lead for the top candidate in history. Next up, uh, Trump. It's Trump won with what appears to be 51% of the vote, which the highest, well, the most ever won is a percentage by a candidate in Iowa during the Republican primary was 40.99%, meaning that, and that was George Bush in the year 2000, George W. Bush in the year 2000. And he beat that by 10 points. Next up, I mean, you go look up some of the previous primaries in years that are contested, not in years where, you've got an incumbent. And it's always a mishmash. But excluding Johnson County, Trump won all of them, and he might very well still wind up winning it because he's only one vote off. And next up, the largest margin of victory in the Iowa primary is only usually around, well, the largest tend to be only around 10%. And Trump won this thing by about 30 points. Like, that is a very, very decisive victory by the standards of this caucus. Excuse me, caucus, not a primary. So, suppose let's get started with Orange Man, Colt. So,
I'd like
com-
to add a
coming into
little bit more context onto that. There's three literal who's also in the race, but this was a 6-person race and he won it by that much.
yeah, admittedly, you know,
No, yeah, three literal
people,
who's, but
yes, I wouldn't call Vivek a who at this point. I mean,
no,
he's made the debate stage.
I'm talking about Asa Hutchinson, that guy that somehow got more than Asa Hutchinson, who I don't even know who that guy is.
Binkley, Binkley,
And then
Brinkley or Binkley.
yeah, something like that. And then the corpse of Christie that got like 15 votes.
Uh, he doesn't count.
Hey, he got votes. It counts.
Well, yes, I guess. But at that point, he had already dropped out. Those were just people who hated Trump, generally, I have to assume,
Hmm.
and just did not like anybody else. And just, I don't understand, going the distance to go that far, you know,
In this weather,
dig your heels in this weather and make that point for, 35 votes, which is Christie's vote total for the state. But still, I
who does
mean,
that? Who is that? Who are those people?
no. I mean, I admire their dedication. I really do. Uh, at the same point, it's the kind of thing that's going to keep me up at night, Colton. Who is that person? Who are those 35 people?
What are their
And,
motivations?
you know, I mean, I get it. Okay, voting is important. But this isn't, throwing support behind a third party candidate in general, where, if they hit a certain threshold, they get money and they get recognition and it helps them in the long run. This is literally a candidate that has dropped out of a race in a major party primary.
He dropped out like a week ago.
Yeah. He dropped out less than a week ago. He dropped out last Thursday. He dropped out
Mm,
last Thursday. So you had a weekend. And yeah.
maybe they just didn't know.
So, you know, maybe not. Maybe not. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But going into the Iowa caucus, what did Orange Man need to do?
Have a blowout victory.
I agree. He definitely needed to put a put his boot down and show everybody that show him who was boss, and he did that pretty clearly, at least in Iowa. Which, yeah, Iowa is Iowa does not have a great track record of being like the determining factor of who wins the presidential primary. It's only about 44% of the time they actually get it right. But that being said, it is a way that I don't even think he needed to do it just to. I don't even think the delegates were all that important. I just think the blowout victory as a way of disillusioning Haley's and DeSantis's donors.
Yeah, just showing them
And
how little that the Never Trumpers actually matter in terms of vote count.
yeah, I mean, we'll come back to some of that in a bit, but especially related to favorables and particularly Haley. But going well, looking beyond that, what would if you were an advisor to the Trump campaign? What would you have seen as your best possible outcome for Trump?
I think they overdid their best possible outcome. I mean, they literally set records.
They did. They did. Honestly, I would have said beat 50%, and they did it. Yeah, that is a very strong lead. It's a very strong introduction into the campaign season for him. And that would be what I would have said as a possible but difficult goal. And they
Hmm.
did it. And so, what are your takeaways from this? At least, what can be learned from Trump's performance?
Well, Trump still has the it factor and getting people to show up in -1 degree weather across the entire state.
Yeah.
Um, I think he's definitely kicked the Never Trumpers in the face with this one. Huh? Anything
I
else I
do.
can think of? No,
I'm going to throw out one.
go ahead.
Actually, I'll throw out two. Trump has always had a knack for outperforming polls,
Of course.
usually within margin of error, but still he outperforms, the median. And it's fairly reliable that he does that. So, yeah, I think that is, and I think that is probably one of the most important things to take away from the Trump campaign is its ability to just absolutely weaponize rural voters and get them to turn out at dramatically higher rates.
I got a question about that for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that that could be attributed to the pollsters being slightly biased against Trump, or do you think that his staff is pretty good?
Mm. Believe it or not, I attribute it to the fact that Trump has a certain appeal to a swathe of voters who have long felt forgotten by modern American politics. And it's something that whoever inherits the America First movement will gain, I believe, provided they can bring the same charisma and focus and to a degree deliver on his stance on yeah, wow, I'm having a moment. His stance of economic nationalism, where you've got people that work in factories and those factories went overseas, and yeah, honestly, I think for example, if you had seen a Bernie presidential campaign that proceeded past the primary, you would have likely seen some of that affect him as well.
Hmm.
But I do think his ability to turn out rural voters is probably one of his greatest strengths. And I think that that impacts the polls because a lot of those people really just don't care about politics. But damn it, they like Trump.
That they do.
Uh, let's see. So, yeah, again, Trump managed to do that. Uh, Haley spent 37 million and Trump only spent 18 million. So I'm sure a lot of that is just free media. And I am curious. Do you think that the indictments have help to you know solidify people's support for Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers on the polls, but they've done polling that indicates that the majority of Republican voters seem to think that it's all just political. It's not an actual case.
Yeah, that I see that a lot in research done on that. What is the whole January 6th issue and the indictments? You've got a majority, it seems, of Republicans who do not view those as real issues. And according to what I've seen, that also seems to be playing out with independents as well, which I think is going to have a big impact if, at least in a general, if it winds up being a Trump Biden situation. Because that appears to be what Biden is going to be running his campaign on. And I'm not sure if that's a winning strategy. Not in the current economic environment and not in the current political environment either.
Yeah, I feel like this is a year where the Republicans have the edge on the issues, so to speak, right? They've done their Roe v. Wade. It's up to the states. So that's no longer that's a states issue rather than a federal issue, right? And then
Yes.
they have the border crisis going on. They have all of the inflation and the economy, and I feel like this is definitely if there's going to be any, real even keeled debates going on between any party members or, candidates, I feel like Republicans are definitely going to be able to run on the issues better and look better that way as well.
Yeah. I do think they're going to have a bit of an edge there. Um, because now a lot of the topics that Trump has run on over the years are deemed some of the most pressing issues in the country. And simultaneously, he is viewed as better with those issues than is Biden. And I also, probably one thing that is actually kind of impressive, I suppose, is that on the topic of abortion across the spectrum, Trump uh, is more, well, Biden still beats him on that issue. He doesn't, Trump performs far better on that issue across all people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, what have you, than any other Republican, which is pretty surprising.
I can see that. Unless you're part of the, America First movement where you're allowed to have some leeway, I feel like abortion is one of those issues where Republicans have to toe the party line.
Yeah, Trump just largely avoids it. That's what it seems anyway. Let me see. Oh, I wanted to mention this in regards to Trump. Some of the numbers that have come around are also indicating that he has the highest favorability among Republicans. And the one of the numbers in there that was pretty shocking was that Nikki Haley only has a 39% favorability among all Republicans, which that would insinuate a very low peak of what she could attain for voters.
Yeah, she seems like the most corporate and the most paid for politician on that stage, and it's difficult to believe that when there's, an Asa Hutchinson and a Ron DeSantis right next to her.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, arguably the honestly, I think at the if Haley winds up losing the primary, which signs point to that she would, I think that one of the things that will come back and be looked at as one of the places where she lost, or where she lost the ability to win if she does maintain that low favorability, would be, I believe it was the last GOP sponsored debate. And it was essentially her bragging about her donors. And I think that given the current state of the GOP, that's not really going to endear her to anyone.
Yeah, that's maybe that would help her out, at a networking dinner, but on the Republican stage, it that seems like a mostly negative.
Yeah. So I suppose one thing just to throw out here towards the end of this is, you know, going back to Vivek, we've discussed his ability to sort of step forward and mantle the leadership of that America First movement in a 2028 race. You think that something that would still happen, or like what do you think the future plans are there? Because Vivek is an interesting figure, if nothing else, and it just be kind of just hypothetically, where do you think he'll go?
I think with him dropping out this early and knowing his strengths, right? He doesn't seem like he's dumb, right? I think dropping out this early, he's probably vying for some sort of Trump position. I don't think it's VP. I think it's probably cabinet.
Yeah. Uh, there have been people within the Trump camp come out and state, "Hey, we're Trump is not considering a Vivek VP."
Hmm.
I I I don't. I'm almost positive he wouldn't be VP. I could definitely see him on in a cabinet position. I could see that very easily.
Yeah,
Mm.
just this early dropping out just seems to signify that for me.
Yeah, and I mean there were a couple things that led into this that happened after our last video. We didn't really have much time to discuss. But you did see a bit of a spat between Trump and Vivek. Trump called Vivek wounded, and so obviously Trump distanced himself from Vivek. Uh, my gut on that is that he was trying to cut off Ramaswamy so that he could sort of pick up those voters in New Hampshire to you know, get a more sizable bit of padding over Haley there.
Hmm.
That's my personal take. Do you have any theories on that?
I think you're pretty much right on it. I just don't. It could also be like a kind of ego or pride thing for Trump, where he's like, I started this movement, and I don't want you to accelerate it without my permission, and I don't want you to, split my vote because he's like, in probably his opinion, that's his vote.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Vivek toward the end was actually using Trump's face in marketing for himself. So I can understand that. There was a bit of, what was it? He was selling Save Trump t shirts, Save Trump, Vote Vivek, something like that as a fundraiser. Yeah.
Ugh, yeah, that's rough. You can't do that.
Yeah. The other thing that happened ahead of this was that, right, not another political figure, not really commented on the race all that much yet, but Rand Paul. And Rand Paul is very well known, and amongst, a lot of very unpopular people in the legislature, a lot of people do tend to respect Rand. I mean, I've known Democrats and Republicans alike who really like Rand. I know Democrats in Kentucky who their favorite elected official in Kentucky is Rand Paul. And honestly, I have to assume that just given how many favorable responses I hear about him that, you know, what he says does carry weight. But a couple days ago, ahead of the primary, he came out, said, I have an announcement. And the next day, he announced that he wasn't going to endorse anybody, but that instead he was going to denounce Nikki Haley. So, the and I suppose like one of the things related to that is that I think this could bring back some of the you could see sort of the libertarian movement sort of coalesce around anybody but Haley,
Yeah.
which to be fair, she probably doesn't have much appeal to the libertarians.
No.
Uh, and especially the thing that Paul cited when he was talking about this was when Nikki came out and said that she wanted people to use their real identities online,
Ugh.
and basically that being a yeah, that that's I suppose the kind of thing you could tell a donor, and then you I don't know you do once you're in office
Who wants that?
because once
I don't even think donors want that. I think only like the CIA wants that.
quite possibly, but I think that I mean I can see it so people don't just go in and talk shit about I don't know CEOs online or what have you.
Those CEOs have kids that do dumb shit online.
I know, right?
Like that's throwing stones in a glass house right there.
I know.
That
But yeah, I think that was is I think that was a huge miss on her part.
that just makes her unelectable. I to me, I don't know about anybody else, but Jesus.
It's pretty harsh. It's that's a hard sell, and I do think that I think Rand pretty much gave ammunition for anybody to attack Haley with that. As I mean, an endorsement means a lot, but if you've got someone who's fairly well respected, a condemnation coming from them can be just as meaningful. And I mean, Rand spoke highly of Trump. He spoke highly of DeSantis. He spoke highly of Vivek. And then he trashed Haley. And basically just by citing what she had said.
What a horrid, abysmal, wrong thing to say. That's what? That's like a Republican saying they want a gun registry. Like that's the levels of that. That's how bad that is.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know what she was thinking with that. I have no idea what she was thinking with that. But that is something that it looks like people who aren't endorsing are condemning. So it will be entertaining to see how that winds up coming about. That Nikki Haley is still winning Johnson County by one vote.
I think they just went to sleep.
You know, maybe. But anyway, tomorrow we are going to be releasing the first of a series of episodes on artificial intelligence, in which we discuss C-suite politics of AI development, the economic impacts of AI, and begin our journey to discover which will happen first. Will Sam Altman be making sexy fembots commercially available? Or will Elon Musk be making genetically engineered cat girls for domestic ownership? So, for you poor bastards who have stayed with us through this, thank you for doing so, and we hope to entertain you in tomorrow's episode. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.